that. There we go. We are live and up and going. The College Prep English class. Thank you. Yeah, it's been my assumption that the extra invitation I'm sending out now is just a duplicate of one I sent out before when I started the classroom. Okay, let's share the screen. We have all kinds of interesting things to do today. Okay. I didn't see a lot of projects coming in, but some interesting ones from interesting sources. And many of you folks are pretty close to the maximum. Get a little closer to this thing here. Okay, we did some Twelfth Night last time, but we did it at the very end. I don't know if anybody has any other parts that they would like to do from it. I know that not everyone had read it or seen it all the way through, and I don't know whether there is more to do there. The problem with Twelfth Night is that we have done it not that long ago in this class. But I don't know if we did it when you were in the class or not.
I think I forget if we did or not.
Yeah. In general, I have an aversion to repeating material, but on the other hand, there's some very good material, and you folks haven't seen it, so sometimes it is worthwhile. And in fact, that's what I think we'll end up doing today, just because it came up as a result of submissions that came in. So let's take a look at that a little bit. One of the big ones is essay writing. Like I handed in a very nice little essay, and the problem is the word little, simply because the fact that it's nice doesn't compensate for the fact that it's not quite as large as it could have been. And unfortunately, that's a major factor.
25 minutes.
So. Yeah, which is exactly what you need to do. And I'm not sure how well I would do in 25 minutes, given that I haven't wielded a pen for 3 decades. I mean, that's simply not a medium that's comfortable for me. The keyboard has taken over since I wrote my own word processor in the early 80s. And so it's difficult to get enough material written in 25 minutes. Yeah. You did very nicely, and it looks very polished for a first draft, which of course is what they're asking for. However, I think it could score better on the SAT, and I have a... I do
for your SAT.
Yeah. I have a paper from MIT on the subject of the SAT essay, and I thought it might be worth looking at that. So let's take a look at our agenda here. First of all, see, get it in a little better focus. There we go. Okay. Here's our agenda. Let me just check and see if anybody's out online in real time. I don't see anyone.
I would invite Diana again.
Okay, how does one go about making another invitation?
It's the top.
This one here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, she has been invited. Okay, it was Diana, in fact, who, having seen it on the screen, I presume, when we were going through possible projects to do next, noted this 3 Men in a Boat and said, let's do that. So, by all means, it's actually beautifully written. And
I've actually,
back, have you
a week before, I had started reading it.
Really? Yeah. Had you? Okay.
Yeah, a week before you was, yeah.
It's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
It's an unexpected classic. It was unexpected indeed for the author, who intended it to be a travelogue, and it ended up being more a series of comedic vignettes. But it's become a real classic, and has inspired many people, and has inspired many spin-offs and various other versions of it. In fact, did you watch the video? The video is the quickest and easiest introduction to it.
Mm-hmm.
The audio file is about 5 hours long. The video is
I was tempted to stop at where I was in the book because I haven't finished the book. I was tempted to stop, but I decided to keep going, and the movie's just great because it has Tim Curry and Michael Palin.
Right.
I don't know who the third guy is. But.
Yeah, I didn't either, but no, that was nicely done. And then I happened across another one. Watched that one yesterday with my daughter. Another one called 3 Men in a Boat with basically it was not a dramatization of the original, but a reenactment.
Oh, like.
They got a
Common?
boat that was exactly the same, and they did basically the same things and took the same route and so forth, with some actors we were familiar with. Madara O'Brien was one that we knew, and a couple of others. And that was really rather fascinating, just the same kind of problems setting up the boat and the islands and so forth. Anyway, nicely written, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. I don't know what more we can do with it, except perhaps do a little bit of reading from the second chapter. Looked very appropriate. Western tradition. This has shown on PBS at various times. I think it was made 20 to 30 years ago. And it is the most wonderful encapsulation of Western history, philosophy, arts, architecture, literature, all combined together by this Professor Eugen from UCLA. And what inspired me about the presentations was that much of it appears, at least, to be unscripted. It may be that he's reading. If he does, he reads awfully well. And if it's unscripted, he does that awfully well. It's a little hard to tell. But indeed, his language is superb. And listen to it just for the language, if nothing else. But he does cover so much history that it's just a wonderful treasure. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it is 50 episodes long. And so the assignment here was, please choose your favorite period or periods and listen to as much for the language as for the content. Weber, he's apparently Romanian originally, but studied at Oxford, and then taught in Canada and then at UCLA. And you can hear all of this in his voice, but his voice is so wonderfully distinct and so very clear. His sentences are always perfectly constructed. Okay, I added one here, the journalist and the homeschooler.
I saw that.
Yeah, now that is a repeat of something I've done before. And have you seen it before in the other class or not?
I forget. I don't think so.
Because this is sort of thing, I don't like to do things over again, but this one is so awfully good. I really wanted to share it with you. And so I'm trying to figure out which direction we should go here. Let's go first at the project. And then we will come back. Okay. Here we have our project. Heather has handed in this nice one on observation, really, as far as I can tell, and it has a few little mechanical problems that I thought it would be good practice for her to go over again. Little things like when toddlers point out the berries smashed on the ground, they feel sad and maybe even wonder if they lived a good life. To what does the second they refer?
Berries are the toddlers.
Exactly. I'm not sure which. Berries or toddlers. Depending on if the child gives the attribution of life to the inanimate, that works, but why not attributes life to the inanimate? That's a more common way to use that collocation, and so I thought that really made made it a little easier anyway. If you can leave words out and maintain all of the meaning, it's usually a good idea to do so.
That points to that they is talking about the berries, but when you only read the second sentence, it's still ambiguous.
Yeah, yeah. But generally one wants to avoid that kind of ambiguity. Okay, try to their best to avoid the berries from getting caked to the bottom of their shoes. Avoid the berries from getting caked. This doesn't really work. So to avoid having the berries get caked to the bottom of their shoes makes it clear. Do you see the difference between the two? Okay, and a couple of split infinitives. Don't worry about that too much. You do see split infinitives all over the place. And the second one here is quite nice. Some people may deem observation useless. We don't have to say deem that as useless. That really doesn't work. Just take out the that and the as. Deem it useless. Okay, nicely done. And we'll see what plays with that. The ideas here, the concept of observation and also living in the present, living at the moment. Both just brought other works to mind, and I thought I'd mention them. Sherlock Holmes, of course, for observation. This is one of the great classics, and I think you all should have read it if you haven't.
Yeah, I haven't read the Hound of Baskervilles, but a lot of the shorter stories.
Yeah, they are so well written. Mm-hmm. They're so nicely written. I find one of the interesting aspects of them is that when he has an American come onto the scene, immediately the grammar just falls to pieces. He deliberately malforms all of the sentences when they come out of the mouth of an American. Very interesting. It's not that that's not true also for many different regions in the UK as well, but Americans are apparently notorious for mangling their grammar. The other I mentioned is The Power of Now, which I don't necessarily recommend, but I found it to be an absolutely marvelous book because I'm very fond of books that are available as audiobooks read by the author. Oh, yeah. There aren't a lot of those. I've given you some already. Douglas Adams read his. And when you hear the author actually reading the words, you really get the feel of what that person knew what to do with words and how he wanted it to be pronounced. Mm-hmm. And this one is read by the author, but what's interesting is the author's not American, he's a German. And his English is just wonderful, much better than the average American. But so the book also came out in German, and he read that one as an audiobook as well. And so it's sort of nice to cycle them and listen to both. Anyway, again, its content may not be entirely appropriate. It's nonfiction and not very easily gone through, I think. Okay, Micah. Now here we have something very interesting. Micah turned in a timed draft, which is exactly what the SAT essay is supposed to be. One is supposed to be able to write a draft in 25 minutes, and then it is adjudicated on a scale from 0 to 6. 0 only applying if the if there was no response at all or it didn't address the prompt. You're given a prompt at the time, so you can't come in with a pre-prepared essay. And then you have to write on this. And Micah did a nice job writing on it. There's no question about that. And it's very polished. In fact, there was very little that I could see in it that needed improvement. Let's see here. The question posed brings up a topic that was frequently discussed among many teenagers: sleep. Many teens complain about sleep deprivation. Nice, exactly the right word. Always find the right word if you can. That's super. And high schools be too strict in their policies concerning class times. Wherever I believe that the lack of sleep in teens is due to procrastination of homework on the part of said teens. Now, here, it's not the homework that's procrastinating, and so that bothered me a little bit. Okay. But the procrastinations of teens when it comes to homework or something like that. as well as less than adequate discipline to get to sleep early, in getting to sleep early enough, in maintaining consistent bedtimes or something like that.
Yeah, to get to is when you always. I always that bugs me when I write as.
Yeah, and it would be so much. I would find it so much harder to do this wielding a pencil than wielding a keyboard, and one is stuck with that sort of thing when you haven't thought it through quickly enough, or if you're used to being able to compose with random access on the screen, and then you suddenly have sequential access enforced upon you. It changes your entire writing process, really. Although many teenagers claim not to be morning people, it's undeniable that most of the best work can be done in the morning, as one has just awakened, possibly had a good meal, and has the maximum amount of energy that he or she can have that day. Well, we've had one throughout this sentence, and so there's no need here to switch over to third person, or third person he or she. We can just leave it as one. Okay, and high school students sometimes make arguments that people in the profession world don't have to wake up early like them, as early as they do. Again, it's hard to get that kind of thing the first time through. And the like bothers me a lot, but an awful lot of people use that.
You know your score on this?
What?
You know your score on this yet?
Oh, this was just a practice one.
Oh.
Yeah.
I took the SAT recently, and I had a different one. But.
Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about preparing for SAT essays. It's not the same as preparing for an essay anywhere else, and it's certainly not the same thing as learning how to write a good essay. But there are some tricks involved, and it's important to understand what they're looking for. Let's just look at this last one here. 9 o'clock is not a great time to start because that only leaves 3 hours till lunch, noon break, which means that only 3 subjects can be completed, as opposed to 8 o'clock time with most schools leaving 4 hours till midday break. That works fine. I just thought this was a little bit easier, as opposed to the 4 possible when commencing at the 8 o'clock time, most schools. Very nicely done. Now, the only problem here, did you count the words in this? I was going to, but I didn't get a chance.
No.
Okay. My suspicion is maybe 300 or 400.
Okay.
If you can, the more words you've got, the better the score is likely to be, as far as everybody knows.
Really?
Let's take a look at this paper back here. Yeah. This is a paper that came out some time ago, according to Dr. Perlman of MIT. Scores on the new essay section of the SAT can be predicted by the length of the essay alone 90% of the time. Longer essay, better score. Shorter essay, lower score. This is a sad state of affairs, and it is sad to note that one of the few mentally stimulating parts of the SAT test, word analogy, has been dropped. Okay, that was some time ago. Okay, something else there. Okay, so this is New York Times. SAT essay rewards length and ignores errors in fact. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I think I'll put this into our assignments, okay? It's not a long essay, and it might be worth reading. Essentially, what they talk about here is the shortest essays, typically 100 words, got the lowest grade of 1. The longest, about 400 words, got the top grade of 6. In between, there's virtually direct match between length and grade. This is a study of what grades were given to papers of varying lengths. And also, let's see where he... okay, I'm trying to find out exactly where he discusses the fact-checking. And this is it's in here somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, you got it.
Right here?
I think so.
Okay, this is in response to the question about fact-checking. They said that one was a correlation between writing long, nice words. Okay, graders also reward good short essays, I said, but College Board erred by failing to release such samples to the public. Okay. Now, the big one is when it comes to fact-checking, there is none, because you can't check all the facts. And so where are you going to pick and choose about the facts that you do check?
It's not run through a computer. It's run through an actual
this
person?
is actually a human being.
Oh, really?
I mean, for one thing, it's written in pencil. So it's a human being with about 3 minutes per test.
Mm-hmm.
And so this sort of defines how the grading is going to work. And it's hard. The question is, how many words can you get down in 25 minutes? Now, you have to follow the prompt that's given you.
Yeah.
And so that means you can't just have it prepared ahead of time, but it's perfectly reasonable to have a few things prepared ahead of time. And if fact-checking doesn't really matter, here was just a very quick suggestion that I made on your paper over here, where we are.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, that was it. Okay. Okay, this is a good essay, but it probably wouldn't score as well as a poorer but longer essay filled with untrue facts, imaginary references, and fanciful statistics. Okay, so you can have some of those prepared ahead of time, regardless of the subject you're given. You can figure out a way to weave them in. Okay, so I just suggested a weird one here.
That's really hard for me. Even when people say, "Oh yeah, you can make up things," like.
I know that it is hard, and it's not a habit you want to get into.
Yeah.
You certainly want to be able to corroborate and reference everything that you're going to use in any kind of a paper, but not in this one, apparently. So Rupert Curmudgeon conducted a study at the University of Glamorgan in 1994, which concluded that incidence of survey in students doubled when classes were scheduled before 8:30 a.m.
So scurvy?
Scurvy? Okay, what is scurvy?
It's a gum disease.
Disease of lack of vitamin C.
Yeah, it's a result of lack of vitamin C.
Did that actually happen?
No, of course not. I just put that together. I mean, as silly as you want, but it's a good idea, however, to have something like that sounds feasible.
Yeah.
Have the universities, major universities of the world, in the top of your head. You want, you've got your Oxford and Cambridge and your Edinburgh and your Sorbonne and Heidelberg and Göttingen. Just know what these universities are, and then you can just sort of throw them out from time to time.
Because they can't check if some random professor at some huge school.
And there's also such an immense array of papers, of journals that are out there. Now, some of them are highly regarded peer-reviewed journals, but there are a vast number of sort of secondary-level peer-reviewed journals that are freely open on the internet, and I have a list of them here in the classroom, which I recommend you take a look at. Let's see, it's under papers. Journals, article, and papers. Directory of open access journals, hundreds of thousands of scholarly papers. Familiarize yourself with things a little bit, just so you get a concept of who's writing what and where and what it looks like to reference something like that. And then you can put together some stock. Where are we? Yes, you can put together some stock references like this, into which you simply need to plug something that relates remotely to the prompt that you've been given, and have those ready and nicely formed, nicely constructed, well integrated text that you can just plug in at any time and write down as fast as you can write. This is my suggestion anyway for any of you who are likely to be taking that test. I don't guarantee it. This is my understanding of what's going on. All I have to go on is various studies, including this one from MIT. But I think it's worth looking at and understanding. How many of you have taken the SAT? PSAT?
I was gonna.
I've taken both.
I was gonna take the SAT a couple months ago. I think March. but I forget what happened. But I didn't.
Okay, well, it's worthwhile, and it has some big advantages. If you can do well on it, you may find yourself being offered scholarships and entrance to various colleges. Have you had any results from yours?
Not
Or you
yet.
just
I just took it like
Okay.
a week ago.
Okay. So it is worthwhile, and it sounds unfortunate to say this about the SAT, but it does seem that that's the case for the essay on the SAT.
Isn't there more than one though? Essay?
No, on the SAT, I understand it to be one.
Okay.
However, the language part of the SAT, I think, is generally very good. They're testing for the right things,
Yeah.
and on very few, in very few instances, do I think there's grounds for taking issue with their contentions about grammar and what should be correct grammar and what shouldn't. The one big one, of course, is the synesis error, which they've actually used in tests. I don't know if they may have abandoned that practice, but they regard it as an error and nobody else in the world does. And so that's why I mark it on papers, because I know that it's worth your knowing what this error is and how to avoid it. Okay, any question on this one?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Those of you who are aiming at taking the test, I suggest putting together a little essay pack for yourself, which would include some references that can easily be plugged into material on any topic and then just comfortably used, which you can write as fast as you can write while you're thinking about something else, if possible. Does that make sense? So just have it ready and handy. Filler material so that you can make your essay longer without danger of inserting any grammatical errors into it. Okay. But the essay you wrote here is very nice. Works well. Okay. And Xander wrote, and I'm sorry, this fell through the cracks. It came in last Thursday, I gather. Was it last Thursday?
Yeah, I told you I was going to send it in.
That's right, that's right.
And
for some reason, I didn't see it on the screen. I didn't see it. I don't know why I missed it altogether. But I saw it this morning, so I had a chance to look at it. Interesting premise and execution. We're talking here about anthropomorphic celestial entities. But I mean that's the case for every mythology that man has ever come up with. We end up
Children's stories in general too.
yeah. And so we've got these stars vying with each other, though it's my understanding of the main sequence of stars that they tend to start out in the higher frequency range, the bluer range, and end up going yellow and then eventually going red.
No, that's not quite how
Okay. Well, in that case, we should perhaps we want to do a presentation on that at some point.
I don't know. If you ask me a question, I can answer it.
Okay. I just remember that the diagram of the main sequence of stars, and in which I gather it was clear that the spectral spectrum of the light from the stars tended to be predictably consistent with the age of the star.
No, that's not how it works.
Okay.
When a star is formed, it kind of, depending on how much gas is there, it lands somewhere roughly on the main sequence and then stays there for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it starts to die, it'll do different things depending on its size. If it's little, like if it's just a red star, it'll slowly go out. If it's bigger, it will get really big and be a red giant for a bit, and then maybe get smaller again and bigger again and smaller again. And whenever it's done doing its poofing up and down thing, then it will explode spectacularly and have one of several results. So, but no, things don't travel along the main sequence once they're on it. They travel on and off, but not along.
No, I thought, well, very good. Okay, and I understand some stars are just burn so brightly, end up burning themselves out more rapidly than others.
Yes, right? The bigger stars, the shorter its lifespan. It burns faster and it's less efficient. If it gets a really little star is able to sort of circulate fuel all through it to the core where it's actually getting burned, and the big ones. They have a core area that circulates, but the outer shell doesn't do that, and so there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't even get used for a long time. And that, it gets complicated after that.
Very good, very good. No, that deserves to, well, it deserves to be studied a little further. I haven't really looked into it a great deal. Excellent. So one of the things I was wondering about was we're talking here in relatively small time periods, whereas thousands of years doesn't really count much when it comes to the age of a star. But otherwise, it's very nice the way it's put together, and it reminded me so much of The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry, I believe was his name. Has anybody ever read The Little Prince?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah.
You read it?
Well, okay. Our mother read it to us, I remember, right?
Well, I read it myself, I guess I did later. I don't know. I liked it a lot. It's very different, sad.
It seemed to have the same flavor as this, which is nice. I mean, it's a perfect children's story in a way. So there was very little here that I felt needed to be corrected. The blue star laughed at its tiny brother and reveled in the awe of the humans. Okay, it may not be as unclear as I thought it was. I wasn't sure exactly what. If the humans are awestruck by it, that would make perfect sense. It was unclear on my first reading too. This one here, this is a rule that we have to stick with. Let's just look at it. But something snapped in its core, and the Earth's heart collapsed in a tremendous explosion that blew away all of the gas it has collected so long ago.
That's a mistake.
You see why it has to be had, right? Because when you're talking in past tense and then you're talking about something that takes place previous, then you have to go into past perfect. That's the only way to do it. Okay. Very nicely done.
Do I have permission to share this with my nieces?
Did you see his comment on your paper?
No.
Please comment on each other's papers and note that they've been commented upon. It's not just between you and me. Please look around. Okay. Well, let's go off and look at some other things here. This came to mind when I was looking through the classroom, and you may recognize this gentleman here. Does anybody have any idea who he is?
That is Robert Fisk.
Good for you. Okay. These two videos up at the top here, they're actually all part of the same video. This one is queued up to start at exactly a specific point, and then it continues into the next one. And this is a lecture he gave at Berkeley, Cal State, University of California, Berkeley, some years ago on the state of journalism in the United States. And I have to tell you a little bit about Robert Fisk. I expect you may have heard that before, in that I think I've assigned you something by him somewhere in the year, I'm not sure. I came across his work when I was just looking through newspapers, hoping to find something interesting out there, and I found an article in Pakistani newspaper, as is described here, and discovered that the writing was just wonderful. He knew how to write. So I started trying to follow him in other newspapers and discovered that most of his material was by subscription only. It was the part of the newspaper you had to pay for. But there's a lot out there now, and I have a good deal in my class. Anyway, he wields language well and appreciates it. I don't know if we should try to watch a little bit of this.
I watched the first part, the full first part.
Good, good. If any of the rest of you, I don't even know what's going to happen if I try to play this while I'm doing screen sharing.
I think it might work.
And what if it doesn't?
Yeah.
You might want to check Google Plus, see if it's still running.
Yeah, thanks. Let's do that. Yeah, as far as I can tell, it seems to work, and Diane is out there. Okay, good. Okay, let me just explain what he says there. Let's look at the article itself, because that explains it. I start here just talking about what I just said about finding this article in the Pakistani newspaper. And then I discovered that Dr. Fisk is, in fact, the recipient of more British and international journalism awards than any other foreign correspondent. And this is the lecture that he gave at the University of California, Berkeley in 2008, which you can go ahead and look at. The whole thing is very good. So, delightful throughout, Dr. Fisk's address presents some well-conceived insights into the state of modern journalism and attributes falling circulation to the absence of literary value and style in the writing of many American journalists. Listen to it and talk about that. It's significantly, for my homeschooling purposes, the grammar, choice of words, use of metaphor, the language devices he employs, and his unscripted speech serve as a perfect example of spoken formal English. That which is tested for in college entrance exams and demanded of college students, here presented in an accessible, conversational, and improvisatory setting. And that's important, because there's the assumption in this country, and you'll hear it over and over again, that nobody speaks in formal English. Everyone makes mistakes in their, no, that's a mistake, that's the synesis error, right? In their speech, or is in his or her speech. This isn't true. You listen to people like Robert Fisk and most of the other orators I presented to you, and you'll find that, no, it's perfectly possible to construct your speech correctly. However, he makes a major mistake here. This is a remarkable character, Fisk, but he has some weird predilections, which I have a little difficulty with, one of which was he doesn't use Google. And so he's out there in the field doing things. He's interviewed Osama bin Laden 3 times.
Wow.
I mean, he does it. He speaks a dozen different languages. He has the background to understand what's going on as well as report on it. So this is a wonderful person to follow. He's trying to retire, of course, but there's a great deal of demand for his work. Things just don't stop happening in the Middle East.
You know what? I think I remember him from what you're telling me about his backstory. I think I definitely remember him.
He probably came up when you were in classical. But again, here I don't want to avoid entirely what we covered before, because sometimes it's good material. Okay. Fisk, he goes on to say that you just don't see wonderful writings in the LA Times. Well, let's look at this. In quoting this superbly worded letter, this is from an unnamed officer in Iraq to his father at home, which was sent to Fisk, and he was given permission to use it. And he looked at it, and focusing on the fact that the prose was on a level not to be found in the LA Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, nor the Orange County Register. Fisk, however, does fail to provide his awestruck listeners with the most crucial piece of the puzzle. This is called a hook. In writing, you give your audience something that strikes their interest, but you don't answer the question or explain it until later.
Yeah.
To keep them reading. This quotes from this letter, and indeed, this little thing here is just beautifully written. Our continued involvement will continue the state of dependency, and our eventual departure will leave nothing but cosmetic structure here. Iraq will return to what it is. Our common sense is not common to these people, and that understanding must be given proper respect. I do my best, but I twitch with an urge for the folly of intrusion. How much?
This is the letter?
This is the letter.
Okay.
The letter. He's quoting a letter from this serviceman in Iraq, and then he goes on after that to say, "Now, when have you read something like that in a newspaper?" But then I go on to explain here the mystery revealed, and who would not applaud? Indeed, he got applause after having read that letter. But who would not applaud? The writer of this poignant passage does wield his words with a proficiency and grace, which Fisk likens to that of Joseph Conrad, and in which any true fan of English writing would exult. A little internet research, however, and this is what Fisk doesn't do, revealed this eloquent unnamed Marine to be one Major Benjamin Bush. And whereas Fisk is certainly accurate in reporting that Major Bush is not schooled in journalism, and is most certainly correct in his assertion that Bush writes far better than do most journalists, this search revealed that he admitted one highly relevant and significant fact. The seemingly anomalous literary mastery demonstrated by Bush becomes far less baffling when one learns that he is indeed a college graduate, but more significantly that his father, Frederick Bush, the one to whom the letter was written, was a prolific author, the recipient of a raft of literary awards, and professor emeritus of literature at Colgate University. The thing is, I go on and say that this uncharacteristic omission is perhaps excusable because who your father is, especially if you're not officially homeschooled, doesn't really play a role in your resume. It's not really something that one would necessarily regard as an important part of a person's schooling. And then this part emphasized, the extent to which Major Bush was influenced by his father is quite evident, not just in his writing, but more clearly and inescapably in the presence of a parental relationship that would occasion the writing of such a considered and well-crafted letter. Indeed, this is not a father to whom a son would send the colloquial, malformed, disconnected ramblings so characteristic of informal American conversational language usage. These words, penned so elegantly for the elder Bush, reflect a standard of verbal communication common to father and son, a beauty of expression which is perhaps far better assimilated through the nurture of unschooling than through any number of formal lecture classes and seminars. Major Bush's sentences were finely and intricately sculpted for a reader whom he knew to be worthy and appreciative of them. You see my point there. This, of course, we're talking homeschooling, and that's really one of the most wonderful ways to school altogether. I don't need to tell you folks that. It also doesn't have to be entirely at home. You can learn it wherever you happen to be. It just doesn't have to be in the classroom. In fact, sometimes it's better if it isn't. Anyway, you may go ahead and read this. I put it into our classroom as part of the assignment. Any questions at all on this? Okay.
No. I mean, yeah, no.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that it's not generally recognized that there are ways to learn, and it's something I've I've talked about and emphasized in the past too, most of the history of humanity and civilization has been one of education being restricted to the privileged classes. If you look at this, and in many cases, there wasn't a lot of education even available to the privileged classes. I mean, you go to the great philosophers, for example, to be tutors to young Alexander the Great, for example. But where do you go? And throughout the Middle Ages, I mean, very few people could read. Nobody could afford a book, and so it wasn't available. What's amazing to me now is anybody in the world who wants education can get it. It's right there in front of everyone, and it's so wonderful. And nobody cares, at least in this country. I mean, in the schools, they make an effort of some sort, but the language they come out of schools speaking is so different from the language that is spoken in universities. It's hard to imagine it going in the same direction, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will get off my soapbox, especially if somebody else has a soapbox they'd like to stand up on. No? Okay. Okay, let's go back to our agenda here. This is the, I'll put this into our assignment sheet. This is this article by Dr. Perelman on the SAT essay. And I think that would be very useful to everyone. Here we are. Okay, these are the three things I've added to the assignment sheet this week. Three Men in a Boat. Frivolous, lots of fun. Language is very nice. You will also learn something about history, but rather tiny little area of history. The history of these little spots along the Thames between Kingston and Oxford on the Thames.
I like the part. I think this is what was happening. He would talk about the poet, and the poet would come alive, and then they would interact with the poet, like they would run into the poet. Did you watch this?
Oh, okay. Yes, I remember the part you're talking about. Yeah,
that's what that was supposed to be, right? The poet.
Well,
the historical
he
poet.
was talking to this effigy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then they run into it. Yeah.
But there is so much interesting history there. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of history in this country that doesn't go back for a couple of hundred years. And most of that, there wasn't anything here in California. But when you live in a place that does go back for a couple of thousand years, and things have been happening there since the Romans, there's quite a lot. And they passed, for example, the island on which the Magna Carta was signed, and talk about the history of that and so forth. Anyway, nice, albeit perhaps somewhat frivolous material there. Did anybody look at anything in the Western Tradition series?
I did.
What did you think? Which one did you choose?
I think I chose the French Revolution and something about about 19th century politics. I think it was. I can't really quite remember what the other one was called.
19th century one.
Politics. It was kind of about yeah.
An awful lot happened in the 19th century.
Yeah, I can't really quite remember.
Napoleon.
Yeah, I can't really quite remember the name of that part.
He does just a wonderful job of bringing everything together. He'll talk about the political history, and then he'll look at the arts and how they reflect it in one way or another, and the literature of the periods. It's a wonderful conflation of all of the different disciplines. Okay, and initially for today, I put this in here. I don't know the extent to which this would be a real interest in the class, so I will look at that perhaps in a moment. And then Twelfth Night. Now, we've been doing Twelfth Night. When I when I mentioned at home that, oh, okay, well, we finished 12th Night. I said, what, you spent 1 week on it? 2 weeks? Okay. It perhaps deserves more than that, but the question is, which parts of it would you like to examine further, if any? If not, fine, we will go off onto something else. We've done my little traversal through 12th Night, which was identifying the characters and the different types of love that were being presented there. But beyond that, I think we've completed it, don't you? You've all watched it, right? Yeah, language is wonderful in it. Let's leave it at that. Okay, so the updated high priority assignments, I've taken a number of those and put them back into the old assignments. And did anybody actually go ahead and read Tarzan and the Ant-Man?
A bit.
A bit, okay.
Yeah, I also read a few paragraphs.
Okay.
I was kind of running short on time, but yeah.
Okay, any thoughts on it at all?
Odd, but very well written.
It's a page turner. It
Yeah.
keeps you interested. But Sandy does use vocabulary there,
Yes.
although somewhat constrained vocabulary. He doesn't venture into new things very often.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's classic and it's important literature, I think, in its own way. And The Princess of Mars, a lot of people liked the Mars series more than they did the Tarzan series.
Sci-fi.
It didn't maintain any pretense of being realistic. After all, you could make up anything you wanted to on Mars. Okay. We will drop those next time. Okay, so that's really all we have among the high priority assignments here at present. And one of the things I want to discuss here, we're a little out of order, but discussion of future projects. As always, if you need more homework, please so state. And what state are we in? Do you feel that you have enough reading? And
California.
I beg your pardon?
I just said California.
Okay.
You said what state are we?
I apologize.
It's okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have a good amount of homework.
Well, what's up here, of course, is virtually infinite, especially if we look at the Western tradition. It's rather unfortunate, but somebody did take the Western tradition and post the whole thing on YouTube, and it was in a nice playlist, and then it's been taken down. And so I fixed the link so that it goes to the Annenberg CPB project, which is where it's posted, and they've got it set up in such a way there's no way that you can record off of it and download it. But it's there at least. You can watch it. And so he's not around anymore, I'm afraid. But
When was this series?
this series, I believe it was in the 80s. It was certainly broadcast in the 80s.
Mm.
Okay. We have a choice now then of directions we can go. If we do not want to read any more in 12th Night, we could discuss projects that we'd like to look at. We could jump into some vocabulary. We could even have a debate.
Oh, debate.
No?
Nobody wants to debate me.
Nope.
I win.
Okay. This is really what I want to use the class time for. You have all of the rest of the week to be doing things like looking at these. And so I would like to use the class time for interactive discussion, and that could include debate, that could include looking at vocabulary. It could also include, and I put it in here, discussion of verb forms and the formula for creating verb phrases in passive, progressive, and perfect. This doesn't sound like the most riveting enthralling material, perhaps. But I found it so when I was going through and doing this. And so would you like to take a look quickly at what we're talking about there? How many programmers do we have in the class here? How many people can actually?
2.
Okay, good.
I've tried, and I don't have patience with computers.
Yeah.
Well, they think differently.
Yeah.
They think different. Yeah, let's take a look at that. I think I put it. Which one is this? This is.
How would you use the word syzygy?
A syzygy, it's a noun, and it is usually used to mean a specific time when multiple celestial bodies coincide, either line up or something like line up.
Okay.
Come close to lining up. Is that?
I mean, like how would it just be used by astronomers?
It would only be used by astronomers as far as I know. Of course, anything that has established a meaning in one realm can have that meaning used metaphorically in some other realm. You watch and you see three TV stars walk into the room and say, "Good grief, it's a syzygy."
Yeah.
Okay. You can do that sort of thing,
Yeah,
but you can always do that. Okay, let's see, did I open this up? Yes, I did. This is in your textbook, and so you can read it at length further on. It's the result of a computer program that constructs verbs and verb phrases entirely by formula. And it's important perhaps to understand that the formula exists, though you don't necessarily have to understand how to implement it. This program has for its data nothing but a list of the irregular verbs. It's got also a little list of acceptable prefixes for verbs. Yeah, there aren't that many of them. And then it's got these definitions here of what is a vowel and which is a doubling character and so forth. And then what the program does is you can give it a verb. I could actually run it here, but I can't run it inside of
screen sharing
of the browser, and therefore I'd have to switch my my windows over. But these are the rules that this program follows, and as far as I know, the program is exceptionless, and it will take, you can say, here's the verb, and I want this verb in perfect tense, progressive tense, passive, with a mobile verb, negated, simple past, and then it will construct the entire phrase.
Wow.
And I can give you a copy of this if you like. It was written before Windows, so it's actually a DOS program, but it's perfectly functional. But what I found in it that was interesting was that
Who wrote it?
I did.
Okay.
What was that this set of irregular verbs is really the only part that it needs to know, because those are the ones that are unpredictable and can't be figured out by formula.
Mm-hmm.
But I discovered also when creating the rule that handles the passive, progressive, and perfect tenses. That originally I started out with a matrix with all multiple dimensional matrix for all of these, and then I realized it could be made linear, and this was the result. And the rules are fairly straightforward. The rules are, let's see. So the step one is simply conjugating the verb itself, and possibly putting in a modal verb, which would be your way of putting things in the future. Step two is If it is not in the perfect tense, go to step 1. If it is in the perfect tense, take the verb out of the verb box, change it to its past participial form, and put it to the right of the phrase line, and then put the verb have in the verb box, and then go to step 1. This is a very stepwise process for creating this this verb phrase. And then we have the progressive. If it's not progressive, go to step 2. If it is progressive, take the verb out of the verb box, change it to its present participle, the ing form, and put it on the right of the phrase line, and then put the verb be in the phrase box and go to step 2. In other words, if the verb is see, change it to seeing, and put the verb to be in the phrase box so it becomes is seeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then passive, if the phrase is not passive, go to step 3. If it is, take the verb out of the verb box, change it to its past participial form, and put it to the right of the phrase line, put the verb be in the phrase box. Is seen. And that would be passive because it's receiving the action of the verb. And so if you, the example that's here in the book is we use the verb see, and we've decided let's go for the whole thing. Passive, progressive, perfect in future tense with the verb to see. You put the verb in the verb box, see, and then you start following the rules. And the rules say, step 4. The rules go through in inverse order. We start with step 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Step 4, passive. If it's passive, if it isn't passive, we just skip to step 3. If it is passive, we take the participial form of the verb see and put it at the end of the phrase and put the verb to be in the phrase box. So the phrase box becomes be, and we take participial form seen and put it at the end. Progressive. If it's progressive, we take P3, that's the ing form of the verb, the progressive form of the verb, to be, that's in the verb box, and put at the end of the phrase line, being, and then we put the verb be in the phrase box, because when we're talking about progressive, we say he is singing, he is going, he is traveling. We use the verb to be together with the progressive form of the verb. But that can be stacked up together with the others. I think I've skipped things. Okay, and then is it perfect? Yes, we decided it is perfect, so we take the participial form of be, which is been, he has been, and put it in the phrase line, and then put the verb have into the phrase box.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to step 1, and all step 1 does is it looks at what's in the phrase box here and conjugates it properly. And in this particular case, we put in the mobile verb in order to put it in the future. Will have, and put it in the front. So the result of this rather convoluted process turns out he will have been being seen. Well, you probably won't say that every day, but if you really need to have something that is passive and future and progressive and perfect tense all at the same time, that's what it ends up being. So anyway, I just want to let you know that's in your textbook if you feel like looking it up and understanding it. I did warn you this wasn't going to be the most gripping material. Okay. The other part that I wanted to perhaps look at, and just let you know that it's here, the end of your book goes through all the different parts of speech. What's an adverb, conjunctions, and with conjunctions, you got a list of them. There aren't that many conjunctions. There aren't that many prepositions or pronouns to worry about. And so they're all listed here. I shouldn't say all. There are always other things that tend to pop up. I came across some interesting prepositions. There are prepositions that aren't used much at all. Do you know maugre is a preposition? M-A-U-G-R-E.
What does it mean?
Look that one out.
M-A-G-U.
M-A-U-G-R-E. It means despite, or in spite of. And in spite of course, is also a preposition. repetition. But, okay, this list of fundamental Greek and Latin roots, it's worth knowing. Most of these are things you already know, though. I would expect you to know that AUD, AUD would indeed be for that, but that's not what this one is. Acious, tending to, audacious, acro, top of something, the Acropolis, demagogue, agog, leader, and what does that stand for? Anybody know? Greek for of the people,
It's
right? For
smaller, right?
democratic
Mm-hmm.
or demotic. Yeah. So the leader of the people, demagogue, or leader of the people, anthro. Anyway, I don't want to plague you with these now. There's no reason for me to read them to you, but they are in the back of the book there, and I think they are worth learning as one step to being able to handle unfamiliar vocabulary. If you know these roots, they help a good deal in figuring out what an unfamiliar word might mean.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard tips that, like, if you can figure out whether it's positive or negative also,
Yeah,
that really helps, especially on SAT stuff.
yeah, and that's one of the first ones you should know is the bene and the mala.
Mm-hmm.
The benefactor, beneficial is positive, and malevolent, malicious. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a very good set to know. All right, we can jump onto something new. First, I'd like to determine. Clearly, we need more material, right?
Maybe a new book to read. I don't know. Maybe we should continue on reading.
Okay. Well, I feel a little guilty about giving you an entire book to read and say, okay, now we're going on something else. But you've got the Three Men in a Boat. It's a delightful book to read. I couldn't find a good audiobook version of it. The one I found was LibriVox, and it was a bunch of different readers, and some of them were good, some of them weren't. And if you don't have a good reader with that material, I did eventually find one that was good.
You know, I've noticed that YouTube has tons of audiobooks on there, even audiobooks of books that are, like
In
I don't know, copyright.
They are under copyright.
Yeah.
Yes. And they usually don't stay there very long,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's something that's rather ephemeral, and I can't count on them. I tend not to put them in my class just for that reason. I can't count on them being there, and that applies also to the Western tradition. That's what happened with it. But I wasn't able to find a good one for that, and unfortunately, there are very few random readers, certainly American random readers, who are going to get the pronunciations right in Three Men in a Boat, all the place names and the people names and so forth. There's just too much going on there. I did, by the way, and thought I'd share this with you, I did discover that somebody, speaking of copyright issues, has put up a vast number of audiobooks of Wodehouse. And I think it was within the last few weeks. They may not last that long up there, but they've got the Blandings Castle, the Galahad Threepwood. They've got a whole series of these, and they are very well read by somebody who knows all the words and all of the accents and gets all the different characters well portrayed, including the American ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend those if you take a look. All of them just have a black and white picture of Wodehouse himself, and then the rest of it is just the audiobook feed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to look for those,
That's on YouTube?
that's on YouTube, yes.
Okay.
And it's wonderful.
What I do is there's this thing where it's legal to download the sound of a YouTube video. And if the YouTube video happens to be an audiobook, lucky us. So it's the uploader's fault. not all our fault. You're not infringing copyright.
Well, you're
If you
not
download the
necessarily expected to be able to do the research to determine that, I suppose.
Yeah,
One of the
and if you don't
problems is-
sell it, you don't sell. It's for your own benefit. If you
Um,
make money off of it, I think.
the legality
I
is
don't know.
so peculiar. I can't possibly speak to the legality. All I know that it is a confusion,
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah,
also
that's
a
true.
confusion of the result of different copyright laws in different countries.
Mhm.
One of the strange things is that the copyright laws in the UK are based on the death of the author and how many
Times
years after
50
the
years,
death
right?
of the author.
50 year, the death plus 50 years.
It's death plus 50 or 75,
Uh-huh.
and I'm not sure exactly where it's which, but that's one of the rules. Here in this country, it's up till 1923, and so it turns out that the early works of Woodhouse are in public domain because he started writing in 1910, but the later ones are going to be slipping into public domain before the American ones, the rest of the American ones do in the UK. So it's very strange. One of the problems, of course, with Woodhouse is if it's legal in this country and you've got a number of readers putting that up as audiobooks, they're probably going to be Americans. They're probably not going to know how.
Yeah.
And so and until it becomes available over there. However, I'm not sure what the rules are. The law is for Australia, but Australia's got a lot of stuff up in their Gutenberg, which is still under copyright here and still under copyright in the UK.
Mm.
So look through the Australian Gutenberg holdings.
Yeah.
But for one thing, they have Great Gatsby.
Oh, really?
And it's not in public domain here, but it is in Australia apparently.
Hmm.
And I've linked to it in my class here.
The reason why the date stopped there, I've heard, is Disney is big on, because they don't want their Snow White and all that to go into.
Right, but the big reason I understood it to be the early 20s was Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that fell into public domain, I believe, briefly, and then Disney managed to get the law changed and put it back under copyright again. Which is strange, because if you ever read Winnie the Pooh, and I hope you've read the original, it's so much better than the Disney version.
Yeah, it is.
It's just a different world altogether.
I mean, the original, the hand-drawn cartoons are pretty. They're okay, but the newer animated ones are not as. They're not
There's
anywhere.
a different style to them altogether.
Mhm.
I don't know. I've never had any appreciation at all for these enormous chins that they tended to put on things like Tigger and the Dragon and things like that. It just a style that whereas the original illustrations by E.H. Shepard, when you stop and look at some of those, they are absolutely brilliant, absolutely amazingly done. And these were just pen and ink.
Yeah.
That's just, but
Not watercolor?
superbly done. Watercolors were added later on. They were all pen and ink.
Okay.
He also, and this was interesting, he also did an illustration for, he did the illustrations for The Wind in the Willows, the original Wind in the Willows. Now, Graham also wrote these other books that we've talked about, and I've assigned. Has anybody read The Golden Age or Dream Days at all?
I forget if I had or not.
I
Would have
recommend
been
them.
in the
They
other
are
class.
really superb, very different. They're about a bunch of kids living in the countryside, and the family and the things that happen. They're beautifully done. He illustrated those too, but he wasn't the first one to illustrate it. Oddly enough, the initial illustrator they got for those was Maxfield Parrish. Has anybody heard of him? He was an American painter. And he painted some superb and remarkable things, but they seemed so incompatible with the subject matter there to me. When E.H. Shepard came along with his pen and ink, all of the Maxfield Parrish things were beautifully colored, although they ended up just being three-colored when printed. But when E.H. Shepard came along and did it in pen and ink, he really captured the essence of the story so well. I recommend those two if anybody's interested. And if you're interested enough and you can't find them, let me know. I'll dig them up. Anyway, how did we get onto illustrations?
We were talking about copyright, A.A. Milne,
Right.
Yeah.
and then
Yeah. Well, I recommend reading the originals there. I mean, did you realize that in his poems, for example, he used the word adiposity? I remember having to go to the dictionary. I thought, adiposity. This is a children's book. Okay.
Mommy, what? Edit.
Exactly.
And of course, if you read Wind in the Willows, you find it's not children's vocabulary, but that's no reason not to read it to kids.
yeah.
It becomes their vocabulary if you do that. That's really the way to go. Speaking of vocabulary, shall we do a little bit of free rice? Does that appeal to everybody?
Sure.
Let's do that.
Let me see.
Games.
What, have we figured out what new assignments we have to add, though, before we do it?
Donate 1,000 grains of rice.
Well, that's an interesting thought.
Oh, one question.
Yes.
How many
You're going to ask how many classes are left or something
No.
like that. No? Good for you.
how many essays are we supposed to?
Very good.
Written?
Very good question. Yeah. As I defined it at the beginning of class, it was 12 per semester, so 24. And already got, 26 or so from Diana or something. So, I mean, it's, I don't want you counting. And I wish I didn't have to count. The problem is, having established that, those of you who aren't up to 24 now, I'm trying to figure out what to do with you. I'll figure something out.
I'm planning on turning in lots.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Again, this was a type of grading that I encountered because I'm actually a Fortran teacher. He was a physicist who was teaching Fortran. Had this way of grading class. That's so many acceptable projects for me. I think that in so many ways that's a wonderful way to do it. Unless we have to practice test taking, and I'm not sure you really want to, it makes so much sense to do that and do it that way. If you can figure out another way, please make the suggestion. Okay, let's find our vocabulary here. And by the way, go through the material that's in this page. It's just vast quantities of vocabulary. Now, they keep on changing this, and I fear that I may have trouble with it. Let's see whether it works. Okay, is it going to work? As far as I can tell.
Free rice app.
No, it's doing something to us here. Okay, is it going to let us close that?
You have it.
All right.
I want to see if there is one.
All right, I think we have to do the first one, and then we can change the level.
Do it again. You dragged.
Yes, you're right. It's very hard with a mouse. Okay, what level would we like? Now again, I think it's a good idea to go through the 30s, but not too far into the 40s. Shall we start?
34?
Shall we start 34? Let's give it a try. Okay. Skeet. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought.
Peel.
Ring.
P-E-A-L.
Ring.
Very good. Oh, Peel's truss.
Bind?
It is bind. It has another meaning too if you've got a hernia. Perlite. I haven't seen that one in there
Volcanic
before.
glass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Together with vermiculite, it's an additive in potting soil. Tithe.
Tenth.
Very good. Wastrel.
Squanderer.
Excellent. Eupnia.
Amount?
Again, I mean, it's odd that this would be down in what is the realm here, 36. Almost certainly it has to be normal breathing, but I think it's...
What is it? What is a eupnia? Or
you're the folks with the dictionaries in front of you. Okay.
Let's see, where's my dictionary?
Bunkum.
Nonsense. Yeah.
Taradiddle. Boulderdash.
Nonsense.
Couturier.
Clothes designer.
I think we have to go with
Yeah,
that.
that's what I was gonna say.
It's French. Must be some
Yeah.
artsy
Yeah.
thing.
Connote,
You know?
as in connotation.
No, decree.
No, I think it has to be implied
Really?
because it's conveying a meaning. Expectorate.
Why didn't it say we
Spit.
were right?
Spectrate. Or act upon.
It is indeed spit.
Indecisive.
Epicure.
Or maybe I'm not.
The Epicureans.
Gourmet.
Yes.
Gourmet.
Parsimony.
Parsimony. That's a
Parsimonious. You're going to
that's
hear
an
more.
involvement.
Involvement in pollywog. No?
No, just
Stinginess?
Wait.
It is stingy.
Oh, stinginess.
Stinginess.
Talk about someone who's parsimonious. I'm sure that's used among other words in the Christmas Carol. Stolid.
Impassive.
Yeah.
Yeah, impressive.
Lope.
Twitter.
I think we have to
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
Yeah, because to
It's-
elope
it's-
means
it's-
to run and
Away.
it's a
away.
particular
Yeah.
gait, G-A-I-T, gait. Assuage.
Ease.
Yeah, you're right. To assuage one's hunger, to assuage a need of one's. Okay. Vapid.
Land.
Excellent. Flighty.
Volatile.
Yeah, we have to say volatile. Diadem.
It's a crown.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I know
Harry
that from
Potter.
Harry Potter.
Oh, interesting. Help us spread
Retweet.
the word. Tweet our message and get
Wow.
kids.
That word was actually an advertisement.
Well,
Oh.
they are trying to make money
Yeah.
for a noble
yeah.
cause. There's no question, but aggression. Just think about egress.
Emergence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come out of something. Matriculate.
Slobber.
Enroll.
Oh.
Oh, was
Dolores.
I had a friend who
Dolores.
had a
Yeah,
dog
it was-
named Dolores, and
Sorrow. Whatever this is. Right there.
Yeah,
it
sorry.
is
Sorrowful.
sorrowful.
Yeah,
But this dog was just such a perfect example of Dolores, so it became Dolores instead of
It's-
Dolores.
Yeah, I know, but it probably has a different meaning.
So sorry.
Yeah.
Saponify.
Hate.
You will very often, I think, find when you got a guess,
Make into soap.
make into soap, that the longest answer is often the right one.
Yeah.
Because they usually don't choose long answers for the fictitious ones. Cognomen. An epithet.
Name.
Very good. Or a sobriquet.
What kind of name is it? Because it's not just a name. It's a.
You've got the dictionary. Okay, obfuscate. Yes, in this case, that must be what they're looking for. Gunite. It looks as though
I knew exactly what the
we're
word
getting into a realm of specialized material here that up at 41. You're not going to need to know a lot about gunite, I don't expect.
Cognomen, an extra personal name given to an ancient Roman citizen, functioning rather as a nickname and typically passed down from father to son.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
What if Dad's nickname is something you don't like?
Yeah.
Don joined.
Don
Don
I-
Don John.
I don't know what we're playing with here.
Yes, you.
That's a castle main tower, I'm thinking.
Those are good false answers.
Yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah.
I think
I'm very stumped.
Let's go for this one, just
I'm-
because it's the longest one. See if
Yeah.
that holds for us.
No, I was right.
Castle Main Tower, very good. Okay. Imprimis,
First.
Yeah. That's the
first printing of something. Baccarol,
Oh, I've heard of
it's
this.
the name of one of, I think it's one of those colleges newspapers. It's a
Gondolier
I'll think of
song.
it
I'm gonna do the Gondolier song.
yeah. It's a song.
you're right, you're right. The famous Baccarol is the
Yeah.
one from The Tales of Hoffmann by Offenbach. This
Yeah.
is late 19th century French. And it's the one that has music in it that everybody knows, the can-can dance.
Yeah.
Is from, well, actually, that's by Offenbach, but that's a different piece from the Tales of Hoffmann. There is. Okay, the wonderful question for you. Would you be interested in looking at a French opera?
Sure.
This Tales of Hoffmann is a fascinating thing, and there are some very good versions of it out there. And the Baccarol comes from it, and it's a beautiful, very sort of pacific piece. But it also has one wonderful thing in it that I think I'd like to share with you, and that is the dancing doll, in which this is a fantasy in a way, but there is a doll that comes to life, and she winds up and sings this song. And this aria is just a beautiful thing, and she winds down several times in the middle of it and has to be wound up again, and that's part of the aria itself.
That's
But
funny.
let me share that one with you. I think that would be nice. Monster. Adventitious.
Hypocritical? Or just, what's the top word?
Discourteous.
Discourteous.
What does that mean?
Not courteous.
Discourteous. Okay.
I think we're going to go with accidental. I've looked this up before. Some words just don't stick in your mind very well. But yeah, adventitious is something that happens rather unintentionally. Virgin.
See if to revoke or immerse.
I think it's flourish, actually. I remember this.
Really?
I'm not here, but I remember the use of the word, and a burgeoning thing is always something that's new and coming up.
Yeah.
So I think it's flourish.
I would be tempted for immerse. Just this is one of the tricky things that you will encounter when you're doing multiple choice tests. If two of them are too close in meaning, they're probably both wrong because they're hard to distinguish from each other.
What is the? I mean, jerking is.
Yeah, but a jerk or a flourish, they're both gesticulations of one sort or another, and I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Okay, good for you.
Seriousness.
Gravitas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dun
Okay,
dun.
and then we get
Castle
Castle
Main
Main
Tower.
Tower.
Which is very good.
Oh,
Okay,
There it is.
We've got, okay, enjoin. This is a legal term. An injunction is the noun. Enjoin is the verb.
Uh-huh. So that means delete.
Yeah.
Command.
Well, if it was injunction. Oh, okay.
Well, that a junction would
Connect.
be, but an injunction is a command. Menage.
That's an act. That's an action, right?
I think we're actually going to be going for household here. In Beagle.
I'm so sad. I know nothing.
There
How
are
do
a
you
number
pronounce
of
it again?
words that we could use for in Beagle.
Beagle.
To
Sweet talk.
yes, yes.
Isn't it in Vale?
Let's look up the pronunciation on
You
that
can-
one.
Let me find it.
There's a sound file. There was a sound
Oh.
file.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I'm not sure you can.
I always thought it was in Beagle, so
Oh.
let's take a look.
You have to turn up your sound.
Inveigle.
Inveigle.
There you go.
Sweet talk. Just okay.
Campanile, Italian.
Context.
Bell tower.
That's what I was gonna say.
La campanella is the little bell. It's the third movement of one of Paganini's violin concerti is called La Campanella and has this little bell that rings in it. Errement, presumably
Oh, okay.
it's French.
Can sound it if you want.
Self-governing.
Which one do you think?
Causing disagreement.
Certainly could be. Bursting out. The ER in it sort of seemed to imply as in erupt. Inveterate.
Habitual.
Yes, very good. Urgent. Now, again, here we're getting into words that are useful to have in your passive vocabulary, but not necessarily words that you need to put into your active vocabulary.
Is it rising?
What?
Yeah, rising. Is it?
I would guess for that. Yeah.
Bursting out.
Superite.
It's a person, so sensualist. I don't know.
I think. Probity.
Integrity.
Integrity. Excellent. Vagary.
So
Whim.
Yeah.
Excellent. Messiel. As in mezzanine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
how you pronounce that?
You can click it. Click the pronunciation.
Oh, bechamel.
Bechamel.
Let's guess at that. It's just
Like
well,
Chanel.
it got a bunch of things in here that could so easily be right.
It's either perfume or mountain pass.
Rich white sauce.
Rich white. Nah.
And I'm not saying
No,
click it.
actually, I think it's as good a guess as any.
Perfume or mountain pass. It's my two guesses.
Well, we'll get it again if we don't get it right.
It's very true.
So this rich white sauce would go. Well,
Oh, it is rich white
Why
sauce.
would they add rich in front of it?
Copacetic.
Uncultivated. No.
Perspectives.
Yeah, a friend who used to use that word all the time. Jactitation.
That's
Short.
false boasting.
Rhodomontade is another good word for jactitation.
I don't know that one either.
I'm guessing it's false boasting. I feel like to say I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, I suggest, having reached 45 here, that we drop down or at least bring things to an end. I know that some of you folks have other things. We haven't really decided on another project, though I thought I would present you with that Offenbach opera, which, or at least one or two things from it, which I think you would enjoy. Doesn't really have a lot to do with English, but I'd like to find another project that would be of interest that you would like to look at. And one of the things about this class, which has been so wonderful, is we have some great thespians here who can read things and make them sound right. And so I'd like to suggest that we do something that would benefit from that kind of treatment. Any specific thoughts on that?
I really want to. I'm just trying to decide something good.
Right. Now, I'd like something that's a little more sophisticated than Akeborn. His material was nice. You all saw those 3 simultaneous plays, but there was nothing spectacular about the language. Shakespeare is always wonderful, but I mean, everybody's done those.
We could do Star Wars Shakespeare. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have
here
actually.
Yeah.
We've done a little bit of Austen, which makes. Tell you what, would you mind some Woodhouse? Let me at least give you a link to all of these new wonderful Woodhouse audiobooks that have been put up there. Probably won't last all that long, but some of them are really brilliant. And I think perhaps the Blandings Castle. Unfortunately, for some reason, the Blandings Castle one seems to be uploaded differently and doesn't allow for downloads. But we'll hunt through them and see which one would be nice, and then we may be able to find the text to one of those. We've done some Woodhouse already, I realize, but that was something totally different, and he wrote so much. Does that sound feasible, reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Let's aim at that then, and we will bring this to a conclusion. I hope it has continued to function throughout.
What about Oscar Wilde?
Well, we did his big work. He didn't do that much. He did The Ideal Husband, which is really sort of a lame second.
Picture of Dorian Gray?
I'm sorry, I don't mean the Portrait of Dorian Gray. As plays go, it was second to the Importance of Being Earnest.
Yeah.
The Portrait of Dorian Gray, beautifully written, but I'm not sure it's the sort of thing that would appeal all around. It's really it's about debauchery.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure that really does it. Ballad of Reading Jail is one of the most depressing things, but it's also beautiful. I mean, there's I'm afraid it would be nice if Wilde had written more. However, Woodhouse did. So, I think in a way. Diana has answered. Mulgar, persons or animals. Thin or lean, assuage, pacify. Okay, mulgar actually in its as a preposition is the way in which I was using it, in which it does mean despite or in spite of. But indeed, it's nice to know that it has this other meaning as well. Discourteous, lacking courtesy, betcha now. Which wine sauce? And I'll bet you that Diana knew that to begin with because she is our expert on French. Thank you for your contributions there, Diana. Much appreciated. Okay, so let's bring this to an end. I'll try to find some Woodhouse. If you find something else that's particularly sparkling and brilliant and interesting that you would like to do here in the class as a dramatic reading, that would be wonderful. Nothing comes to mind now. We've done a great deal already. One that perhaps comes to mind, if you're interested, would be Pygmalion.
We did that earlier in the year.
Did we do that
Yeah.
one? We actually did. Went through it. Okay. Because Shaw wrote a number of other plays as well, which are again Arms and the Man and Major Barbara and so forth. They don't really come up to the same interest level, I think, for the class. So. Okay, we will go there. Nobody wants to do another Shakespeare.
Sure.
What's your favorites?
Comedy of Errors. We could do that one. Oh,
Comedy of Errors. It's rather a frivolous one and fun in its way. The problem is that all of it is situation oriented.
yeah.
And there isn't that much in the way of dialogue that's so spectacular. I've always been drawn more to the dialogue.
My least favorite Shakespeare
Or
is
it's just not as serious. That along with Love's Labour's Lost, it doesn't really seem to have that much to it.
Yep.
Okay, we will think about it.
okay.
Okay, we will bring this to an end. Post further ideas if you have them. And we will go on to do the music class, and we will resume next week.